Good morning. Welcome back to Daybreak. It's now how many minutes? It's 14 minutes to 7 o'clock. My name is Sam Gituku.
And my name is Zinze Kibiku. Thank you so much for choosing Citizen TV. This is Daybreak. We're live from Nairobi. And like we said, this being a Tuesday, our panel is all female. And before we can even jump into things, here is an introduction of them. Sitting closer to me, British Honorable British Elachi, Speaker of the Nairobi County Assembly. We also have Honorable Rosa Buyu, Woman Rep for Kisumu County, Priscilla Nyokabi, Commissioner with the National Gender and Equality Commission. Ladies, it's so good to have you with us this morning.
Karibuni sana, and we take a look at what's happening in the dailies. We start with the front page of the Standard. You'll see that a Teacher Service Commission planned for new 95,000 teachers, and they have given a rundown of how that hiring will be happening in 2019. That is this year. There would be 12,626 primary school teachers. For secondary, there will be 6,374, and the total is 19,000, and it will cost 16.4 billion shillings. And then that runs until 2022, where each year they will be hiring 19,000, and then in 2020, actually up to 2023. So in total, for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they will have hired 95,000 teachers to bridge the gap, and also to deal with the situation of 100% transition of learners from primary school to secondary school. Still on the front page of the Standard, Raila hosts CSs in Kisumu, speaks on SGR. Says that all is not lost, and speaking on the issue for the first time since he and President Kenyatta returned from China, Raila said they did not fail to secure a loan and plan was still on. So we'll be looking at that and how significant now the voice of Raila Odinga is in as far as government matters are concerned. We'll be looking at what is the exact place of the former Prime Minister in the current administration.
Of course, that is the Standard. The Daily Nation has also highlighted the issue of ministry hiring about 12,000 teachers, even alongside another 100,000 interns between now and the year 2023. But they have gone big on matters of agriculture, food security to be specific. Remember, this is President Uhuru Kenyatta's One Big Four agenda. New plan to revive the agriculture sector. They have key points over here, from farmers' input hubs all the way to eco-blocks. Radical proposals include a possible shift to GMO, establishment of 50 new large-scale farms of 2,500 acres or more, and putting 150,000 acres of crop under irrigation. Question is, what happened to Galana? If we were to use Galana as a project, will this work? Matters politics. It looks as Nanok ditches Raila for Ruto. Deputy President William Ruto returns to Nairobi today after his visit in Turkana, where he met with Turkana Governor Josephat Nanok, who now says that come 2022, he is supporting the DP. And if you're following on that story that we earlier mentioned about how the Saudi royal family was conned, 250 million. Do you know what it is to con someone, then to con the Saudi family? All right, details on page 4 of the Daily Nation.
And then finally, on the back page of the Daily Nation, state to hire 12,000 teachers per year. Of course, a continuation of that story that we're talking about, the estimated shortage being 96,000. So obviously, we'll be looking at the cost of that and whether it is the ultimate solution to the challenges that we face in the education sector. And we begin right there. That, of course, you've been looking at the education quality, the quality of education in our public institutions, especially primary schools. That case in point of Kilifi County, of Mangororo Primary School, of how learners do not have the basic infrastructure. Now we have a new curriculum being rolled out, and now we have the Teacher Service Commission employing new teachers. How exactly do we get... You have been a teacher, Rosa Buyu.
Oh, yes.
Do you say that once a teacher, always a teacher?
Yeah, I was just about to correct you that I'm still a teacher.
Yes, so is this the ultimate solution, getting more manpower in our schools?
I think for many years, the government has laid a lot of focus on offering free education, and also a lot of focus on increasing numbers of students, or ensuring that every Kenyan child attains free primary education at the expense of the quality of that education. You cannot improve on quality of education when you don't have enough teachers. When I was a teacher, and that's a few years ago, if you had a class of the maximum numbers of students you'd have in a class was like 40. If you have 40 students in a class, you are able to pay special attention to each of those students, and you are able to ensure that all your students move up together. But now, you have cases where a teacher, for example, has 100 students, sometimes even 120 students in one lesson, in one room, or in one sitting. It is not possible to educate or to get quality education when you have one teacher manning so many students or teaching so many students. So I think that it is good that the government now is laying more focus on manpower, because without manpower, you cannot improve the quality of education. We know about the 100% transition. It's a good thing to ensure that people move to get a higher level of education.
Right.
But the problem is, you don't just wake up one night and decide that you're going to have 100% transition. What happens to the facilities? And you're talking about the school in Kilifi. Surely in such a circumstance, are students comfortable enough to learn? What happens to the facilities? What happens to the teachers? Do they have enough manpower? So I think it's time that the government actually also lays focus on manpower and facilities of our education if they truly want to get quality education for our students.
All right, we are saying that, but is that the only solution? Is that the only solution when it comes to attaining alternative models for teaching and learning, especially in this day and age of technology? And the reason why I ask this is that, fine, we hire 12,000 teachers. TSC says that they've hired about 28,000 additional teachers to handle the shortage problem. But come tomorrow, the same government will say that they don't have enough money to pay the same teachers they've hired.
I think the government just has to refocus. It is good that they've realized that there's a huge shortage of teachers in our schools. The government has to refocus. The effort on corruption, on fighting corruption, and streamline also other sectors where we are spending money that we don't necessarily need to spend money on. So if the government's focus is to give quality, affordable quality education in as much as it's free, we then must refocus and refocus also on our finances and spending.
Right.
And make sure that, because even with this increase, it does not mean that the issue of shortage is being addressed. It's not going to be fully, completely addressed, okay? It's just that it's going to get better so that a teacher can actually teach a class that she can handle or he can handle.
Honorable Nyokabi, how do you exactly get to the point of, yes, you invest in more manpower, you invest in a new curriculum, but how do you ensure that the Ministry of Education is able to focus on all the schools and improve the infrastructure? Because part of the reason the Kenya National Union of Teachers has been opposed to the rollout of the new curriculum is exactly that, the infrastructure. So is the government at the top, the ministry at the top, is it able to go down to the ground and ensure the infrastructure is in good place?
I think they've started well through the recruitment of teachers. And I personally really like when the newspapers are about development matters. So today for me is my happiest day. On the Standard we look at education, on the Nation we look at agriculture, as opposed to politics. It feels really good because these are the conversations we need to have. So I'm happy that they've started with education and the number of teachers. There's been a bit of hopelessness when they don't recruit these high numbers. So really, really commendable. 19,000 means that we have many of our graduate teachers getting absorbed. But you're right on infrastructure. So I want to see, I would prefer to see the budget for recruitment with the budget for infrastructure, because then you have to continuously build schools, continuously build streams, and continuously improve laboratories and the skills and technical skills that we need in our schools. So I'm hoping that the conversation doesn't just end with recruitment of teachers, but it goes further to the infrastructure, and particularly ensuring that the distribution of that infrastructure is also well done. But just before I leave the point, is also the idea that we have good numbers of teachers. I think what we're hoping to see is this attention on healthcare. I want to wake up one day and find a newspaper that says we are going to hire 1,000 doctors for the next 4 years to improve our universal health coverage and our universal health care. So good that education has happened, good that security has happened. For the last couple of years, we've hired 10,000 police officers every year. Until now, we have the required ratio of police to population. I think now with this, we're going to have the required ratio of teacher to pupils, but let us now move to healthcare. So very, very soon, we want to see the numbers of doctors, the numbers of healthcare workers increase in the next maybe 4 years of SGR. Right. But fairly good plan. And also hoping that we don't train teachers just for ourselves, that the region, Botswana used to absorb a lot of our teachers, Rwanda, Uganda, South Africa. We have a capacity now to train not just for Kenya, but even for the region.
And that takes me to my next question, Honorable Elachi. We're looking at CBC. We're looking at free primary education, free secondary day education, and looking at 100% transition from primary to secondary. A lot is happening within the education sector. So even as we're saying, okay, this is good, we are employing more teachers, we are looking at infrastructure, how though do we maintain the quality of the teachers? For example, subjects such as STEM are a challenge.
Well, first of all, we need to, let us first thank the government for at least, for the last 10 years, I think we've talked about this, 10 years. You need to recruit new teachers. They recruit and then you wonder what has just happened, and then they go back to their different conflicts between the union and the Teacher Service Commission. But now when we look at now the infrastructure, and for me now, you know, there's one thing we need to ask ourselves. One, you find that national government, you have your policies. You have Parliament also with their sort of policies of implementation. We agreed that CDF is it's a fund from the national government for members of Parliament to specifically deal with education and security. Now, when we are talking of infrastructure, you need to bring these two together. Because right now, a member of Parliament can build a school, can change the facility of a school, if need be. But at the same time, we're asking ourselves, since 2002, you've been having this fund, and it has been dealing with building of schools and all that. Now, if today we are still talking about that infrastructure, and yet you expect the 42 or 40 billion that is going now to Parliament in terms of security and education, why can't they now prioritize and say, look, we're going to prioritize ourselves. In my constituency, I am able to manage and look at the schools and support government, because it's money for government anyway, to do the infrastructure, so that when now we are rolling out the whole plan, we are not seeing a school the way you saw in Ganze, the way I saw in Busia, where we have still a school with matope in this country.
So are we attaching funding to the quality of education? Because at the end of the day, like you said, it's not that the budgets are not there. There are numbers.
They are there.
Yes, but then you look at the output.
That's the problem. We don't attach, and that's why I'm saying it is now for the members of Parliament, those from the constituency who have money, 100 million plus. Surely if you say you want to put it now in education, because that's the only role, the roads have gone, I think they've remained with only 2 roles. Right. So why can't you now concentrate on the schools within your constituency and build that infrastructure and go back to national government? Because I know if you go to national government and you say you have a school, they normally give you like 3, 4, 5 million. But the other thing then we need to ask, as you go and do all this, how much are we spending? Because I know when you go in some of these constituencies, you find somebody spending a lot of money doing just one classroom. Yet our women reps, when you look at the money they have and the way they have tried their best, you come with an infrastructure of a market vis-a-vis the one who has 100, and you're wondering. So me, I'll tell members of Parliament, you have an opportunity now to spend your money into this infrastructure of teaching and schools, and you complement what national government is doing in bringing in now teachers who at least we can reduce now the ratio of a pupil to a teacher, which is at the moment a teacher can have 100 pupils. How? With one subject. How will you mark the books of the teacher of the pupils? How will you even engage and sit on one-on-one with this child? And that is why we are having all these challenges, not just in primary schools, but in secondary schools also. Look at how, as you say, you find that we are saying 100%. So you go in a school, you have Form 1 with 6 classes, Form 1, A, B, C, up to D, E, F. Now you ask yourself, one teacher is going to teach maths in all this.
For the 4 streams.
For the 4 streams or 5 streams. And then you're supposed to take all these books and start marking. And you need, in that marking, I'm supposed to identify, we have those kids who are able to do their things. We have those who are very slow. There are those you see, this one, I need to do a one-on-one. And those are the challenges I think teachers have faced. Those are the challenges also the students have faced.
All right, and of course, according to the basic education regulations, is that the size of a class at primary level should be between, is it 40 to 45? And at the secondary school, it should be a maximum of 55. But rarely will you find...
That's not happening.
Yes,
that's not
rarely
the
will
case
you
on the
find that
ground.
happening.
Yeah,
So I wanted to ask the question, because she referred to matters to do with the infrastructure. What is the difficulty in our institutions, be it the NGCDF, ensuring that the cost of a class is guided by the bill of quantities at the public works level? What is so difficult that we usually go beyond those regulations?
Okay, I don't know if I understand your question, but indeed, if you're going to build a classroom with CDF, you must get public works involved, and they must give you BQs or bill of quantities. And basically, I don't think there's anybody who builds a class outside that range, you know? Like a class would be with 500,000, for example, or you can have a good class that students can actually use for education facility. So I don't think you'd have a case of a class being built at 1 million shillings or anything like that. That wouldn't even be prudent, because for that 1 million, you can have 2 or 3 classes, you know? So yes, indeed, they must go through public works, and they must have bill of quantities from public works.
Okay.
Yes.
And speaking of which, Honorable Rosa, I would love to get your thoughts on this issue of the fact that Professor George Magoha says that when it comes to the disciplinary of teachers, that is in the matters of the hands of TSC. This is after about 160 teachers were interdicted by TSC after the interruption that we saw based on the new curriculum. Professor George Magoha said, and I quote, "The interdiction can only be lifted by the TSC and not the Ministry of Education." Do you agree? This is coming from the boss.
Yeah, I think what he means is TSC is essentially the employer of teachers. So TSC is the one that hires teachers, and TSC is the one that can fire teachers, okay? So if you let the ministry take over that mandate and rule or make a blanket ruling that teachers go back to work, then you'll have usurped the mandate of TSC. So I think he is right in saying that it is Teacher Service Commission that can recall or can pardon or can get the teachers who were interdicted to come back to work. Yes.
But where do you draw the line, Honorable Priscilla? Where do you draw the line with the Kenya National Union of Teachers uncomfortable with the new curriculum rollout? And on the other hand, the employer is saying, this is wrong, you cannot disrupt our activities, you cannot boycott learning. Where do you draw the line between a teacher does not feel that they want to participate in that, and then the requirements from the employer?
Well, the Ministry of Education has always required more consensus building than law to drive some of these matters, because our children are concerned. So the hard law would, of course, be that the discipline of teachers is with TSC, and the ministry can drive policy as far as matters of education are concerned, and the new curriculum is policy. So it is up to the ministry to drive the new curriculum. And so I just hope that the new CS really has in himself a bit of diplomacy, because it's really not hard law. It's a lot more consensus building, because we do need the Kenya Union of Teachers. We need the teachers in the rollout of the new curriculum, but we need, if they have some concerns around their own training or concerns around the preparation for the new curriculum, I think that those can be addressed as part of the change momentum for the new curriculum. And there are particular benefits for the new curriculum if you look at special education, for example. And I would want to hope that the numbers here will include special education teachers.
Right.
We now want children with a disability to have the same opportunity for education as any other child in our country.
Right.
And so the concerns that TSC would have, or the concerns that KNUT would have, need to be addressed alongside moving the country forward as far as our education is concerned. I particularly remain very proud of our own education system. When you go out into the world, you go to the US or you go to any other country, our lawyers compete at the same level as any other lawyers around the world. And so we want to keep the good of that education system, improve it, but keep moving forward. And so consensus for me becomes really what Professor is going to have to do. People are a bit afraid whether he has that vein. So he's going to have to use the leadership streak, but also quite a bit of consensus, get consensus, so that we don't have strikes around the new curriculum. I mean, the country has suffered so much over union strikes, and what we want to see is progress around matters of education. And I'm particularly worried about that special education part. Can we see a little bit more concentration, because many of our special education institutions are in particularly bad shape. If you talk talk about infrastructure, the assessment centers, there's very little funding that has gone into infrastructure around special education. So can we see a bit of concentration on that? And KNUT, they now sit in Parliament with Sosion. So we hope that also the political skills in Parliament will also make him, because negotiation is two-way.
But just to add on to that, I don't think the teachers are against the new curriculum. I think what they're against is the way it's being rolled out. And it's up to the employer to also listen to its employees. And if the employees are saying, let us take time back, you know, and do this right, I think TSC should listen to the teachers, because what they're saying is, we need time, we need proper training, we need proper planning to have this new curriculum actually be effective. You know, so it is the employer who should actually also listen to what the teachers are saying.
All right, and of course,
what they are doing, interdicting them, because I think that's a bit too harsh, and that, like Nyokabi says, is not the right way to go.
Okay.